Hello, this is a tutorial for the disappearing loop cast on, and more specifically the disappearing loop cast on using two colours in order to start a project for two colour brioche. Here I have the very beginning end of my Midnight Sherbet wrap. This is the right side and the wrong side, although it's two colour brioche, so it's a double-sided fabric. And this project starts and ends with very few stitches. It starts here right at this little point here. The cast on method that I use is the disappearing loop cast on. It's a really nifty, neat little cast on when starting with very few stitches, and especially for two colour brioche. You can do a single disappearing loop cast on, and there are disappearing loop cast on, and there are other tutorials out there for that. So I'm just going to show you how I work that. I'm using a DPN just for ease in this tutorial, and I'm using the same yarn as you can see here that I use in this project. This is my leftovers. I know some people may ask, so these yarns are both DK weight merino yarn from Trey Liz, who is an indie yarn dyer based out of Greece. I'll put the link down below. This colour here, the multicolour, is the Charlotte colourway, while this denim blue is the Celine colourway. I'm going to be using this multicoloured yarn as my foreground colour, and this is my background colour. So in order to do the cast on, I'm holding my two yarns together. Over here I have my tail yarn. The tails just need to be long enough so that you can weave those ends in at the end. And over here I have the yarns which are attached to my balls of yarn, the working yarn. I'm going to hold that across my left index finger, and I'm going to wrap these two strands anti-clockwise, counterclockwise around my left index finger. Loosen up that loop a little bit and you can see how the loop looks. There. So these are the ends. I'm going to take my needle. In this case I'm using a DPN. You would be using a circular needle for casting on the actual project. I'm going to hold my tails between these fingers on my right hand just to keep them secure. And then a little tip for what I found that makes this easier. I'm only going to be casting on the stitches anyway with the foreground colour, but I'm not just going to take the foreground colour around like this. I wrap it over the background colour. This is not essential. This is just something that I found worked nicely for me when starting off this project. I now am ready to knit a stitch with this foreground colour here. I am going to take my first stitch, and I'm just going to say, if you just take your stitch like this, you can see that it's not mounted correctly. So what you need to do is take it such that it is mounted correctly. So you go over that strand of yarn like this, and it's mounted correctly. I'm now going to do a yarn over. So the instructions are knit one yarn over, knit one yarn over, knit one. I'm going to do my yarn over. When I come back through the loop, I'm not going to come under this strand of the working yarn of the background colour. You absolutely can. This is really just my little tip for purely aesthetic reasons, which you're going to notice right at the end. I'm going to leave that towards the front, so out the way, and I'm going to go just through these other two strands here. I'm going to do my knit one, another yarn over, and knit one. I now have my 5 stitches that I want on the needle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to let go of all of the working yarns. And over here, I'm going to come and I'm going to pull on these tails. It's going to pull up that loop. Just tug until it all looks nice and neat. And what you'll notice is that this background colour strand is now here between these stitches. If I had left it and kept on pulling my yarn such that this was held together with the loop, this piece of yarn would be over here. And the reason I say this is that now what you do is you slide these stitches to the other end, and you have to work across them with the background colour. And typically patterns, certainly my pattern, will have you slipping. These edge stitches are just going to be worked in the foreground colour throughout. So you're going to slip that stitch, and your first stitch you're going to work is this one. And like this, your yarn is here ready to work that stitch. So it's just a little tip. It's not the end of the world if your yarn is over here and you have to pull it over. Ultimately, this project starts with such a small point, you're not going to notice ultimately at the end. It's just a little tip. So that is the disappearing loop cast on, and happy brioche knitting.